A Hamas misfire, how many people killed at a hospital, and they went so fast to blame Israel, and the rest of the world listened to them and listened to their propaganda. Nobody is concerned to check what is true and what is false, not knowing that we are going against evolution. We are going against the collective consciousness of humanity. And yes, they are dying. Who's causing all this death? Blame is the cheap way. It's the way of the coward. Those who have the courage, take responsibility.
Of all of the lies told about Israel since the beginning of the October 7th war, none is more false and more damaging and more evil than the charge that Israel is deliberately targeting civilians, none less than Colonel John Spencer, the worldwide leading expert on urban warfare. He's the head of urban warfare studies at West Point, has written numerous articles about how Israel is doing more than any other military in history to protect civilians. And I've spoken to Israeli soldiers who have been in Gaza in the fighting repeatedly. They don't even see civilians. The evacuation notices and the leaflets that they drop really make it such that the civilians aren't even around. And what's so damaging and so evil about this is not simply that it smears Israel, but that it takes Hamas off the hook. Now, no one understands this better. No one understands the evil of Hamas better than Mossab Hassan Youssef, who's otherwise known as son of Hamas. Maybe you've heard of him. He was born and raised in the leadership as a prince of Hamas. He was set to be one of the leaders of Hamas, and he saw the light and realized the evil of it. And then he started working as in collaboration with the Israelis. And since then, he has been a very important voice calling out the evil of Hamas. He's someone who knows it well from the inside. Here is a talk that he gave on behalf of the Israeli mission to the United Nations about this particular evil of how immoral it is when people blame Israel for the death of children in Gaza. Have a look, and we'll talk about it in a couple minutes.
None of us should forgive this crime. Gambling with children's blood for political gain, it doesn't get worse than this. So Israel now got stained by blood. This is what Hamas wanted to happen from day one. They wanted to sacrifice thousands of children so Israel can take the blame. Digging tunnels and bunkers under hospitals, schools, launching missiles. A Hamas misfire, how many people killed at a hospital, and they went so fast to blame Israel, and the rest of the world listened to them and listened to their propaganda. Nobody is concerned to check what is true and what is false. Whatever that serve our political and short-term interest, we go for it. Suicidal, not knowing that we are going against evolution. We are going against the collective consciousness of humanity. We're going against the interest of children, the defenseless children who has no one to speak on their behalf. They don't have the power to discern. And yes, they are dying. But who's causing all this death? Blame is the cheap way. It's the way of the coward. Those who have the courage, take responsibility. They don't blame. If Hamas is not defeated, if Hamas is not eradicated in Gaza, we will set the model. We will give the freedom to so many radical groups around the world. And this is just a warning. If you really care for the global security, and I speak as a person who was part of the counterterrorism effort against radical Islamists, if Hamas is not defeated in Gaza, it will inspire many groups around the globe. They will see that few thousands of savages can blackmail the international community, the superpowers, and bring democracies to their knees. Many of them are watching now, And many of them are very happy about how the world is responding. And many of them are satisfied to see the state of confusion and fear and anxiety.
Wow, that was very powerful. And he's always a very powerful speaker. He's someone who's really worth following and listening to. I want to focus on two specific things that he said. One of them is that he said that if Hamas is not destroyed in Gaza, it will inspire other movements like them all over the world. And you might ask yourself, well, why? I mean, look at all the destruction they brought upon themselves. You know, why does it look like Hamas has had a victory just because they survive and aren't destroyed? But this really gets into the psychology of the jihadist mind, of the Middle Eastern mind, really. You know, because as Westerners, we look at all the destruction in Gaza and we look at how Hamas has been beaten back and weakened militarily, and we say, well, how can they possibly define this as a victory? But that's not how they define victory. You can't define victory only in your own terms. If your enemy doesn't accept the fact that they've been defeated and they define victory differently, they could still be an inspiration to their followers and to the people who share their ideology. I want to drill down on that point now. You see, again, as Westerners, we think of victory and defeat in terms of the amount of destruction, in terms of how much power we have now versus before. They define victory as survival. They're playing a very long game, and they don't really care about how many buildings are destroyed. They don't really care how many of their civilians are killed. They are a culture of death. They speak openly about how they're all willing to die and be martyrs, and they even say, we love death just as the Jews love life. So their definition of victory is different than ours. Merely surviving against the Israeli entity is itself a victory and an inspiration to their followers worldwide. Now, more importantly, Mossab here talked about who is causing all the death. That was specifically what he said. Of course, babies are dying, but who is causing all the death? And here is where, Hamas openly admits it. They're even proud of it. Hamas officials admit its strategy is to use Palestinian civilians as human shields. They've admitted this many times. They say it proudly. They talk about how all of our people are willing to die, and that's why they always encourage the people to stay put, even when Israel drops leaflets and warns about bombing in a particular area. They encourage the civilian people to stay. They don't want them to evacuate because they've said this openly, that part of their strategy is to cause maximum civilian death so that they can blame Israel for it. And this question, who's causing all of the death, is actually also a legal question. And this doesn't get talked about often enough. In the Geneva Conventions, in Article 19, it speaks about the protection of civilian buildings like hospitals and schools and such things. And it says here as follows: the protection to which civilian hospitals are entitled shall not cease unless they are used to commit, outside their humanitarian duties, acts harmful to the enemy. Okay? And protection may, however, cease only after due warning has been given. So what that means is that, even when civilians get killed, because Israel gives fair warning, because Israel drops leaflets, Israel announces where they're going to be bombing in advance, and because these buildings, these civilian areas, are used as launching pads, they're used as storehouses for weapons, they're used as command centers for Hamas, and everyone knows this. We're very much aware of this. What a lot of people don't realize is that according to the Geneva Conventions, what that means is that, yes, it's terrible when civilians get killed, but the responsibility, even legally, it's not just morally, but even legally, the responsibility for all the civilians who are killed in these strikes falls on Hamas. So yes, it's terrible that civilians are being killed in the Gaza Strip or have been killed in the Gaza Strip, and the world should be angry about that, and they should be angry at Hamas. And this is the moral failing that Mossab is putting out there, and he's attributing it to not to stupidity, not to anti-Semitism. He's attributing it to cowardice, that these nations are afraid. They're afraid to call out jihad. They're afraid to call out Islamism. And that is, if you expand that, you pull back the camera, widen the lens, look at the whole world, this is the moral failing that the Western world needs to overcome. The Western world needs to confront itself. It's its own worst enemy because it's not willing to look jihad in the eye, identify it as an enemy, and defeat it. So we can only continue to pray that the world will wake up and push back, and otherwise, jihad is on the march. So Mossab is a very important voice. You got to follow him. You got to listen to what he's saying. But again, if the West needs to wake up, it needs to look jihad in the eye. It needs to defeat it. It needs to identify Islam as the enemy that it is.